Baltimore City State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby, who at 35 is the youngest chief prosecutor of any major American city, and who became recognized nationally for bringing charges against 6 Baltimore police officers in the Freddie Gray case, was the keynote speaker today at the Women in NAACP Empowerment Summit in Philadelphia. Mosby talked to the crowd of over 500 about her journey to state's attorney, social policy. She gave advice for young women and shared personal stories of loss as well as triumph.
But let me say to you, we have in front of us a person who's going to go miles and miles and miles and miles. I give to you the Honorable Marilyn Mosby. I give to you the Honorable Marilyn Mosby. Marilyn, the Honorable Marilyn Mosby.
Good afternoon. First and foremost, I'd like to say that it is such an honor to be among all of you beautiful women of color this afternoon. I am a proud member of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, an organization that for the past 106 years has been at the forefront of social, economic, and civic advancement for Black and colored people across America. I am eternally grateful and humbled, deeply humbled that my words have been deemed worthy enough for this special occasion. I must extend my sincere appreciation to the Director of Women in NAACP, Dr. Thelma Daly and Chantel Clear, for this awesome invitation to speak. Thank you for being a living example of excellence and laying the foundation for the women in this room. I would like to acknowledge National President, CEO Cornell William Brooks, Co-Chairman of the National Board of Directors, Rosalind Brock, and Honorary Chair of Women in NAACP, Janice Broom Brooks. You see, I know all too well that behind every great man is an even greater woman. My husband, Councilman Nick Mosby, is here to attest to that, right, Nick? No, seriously, thank you for your service. Last but certainly not least, I'd like to acknowledge and thank my great man, my husband, my best friend, Baltimore City Councilman Nick Mosby. Thank you for being my rock, the constantly encouraging me and pushing me beyond my own self-expectations. I love you. With all of the negativity that's happening in our world today surrounding young people, we must take the time out to empower those that are self-motivated, self-disciplined, and self-determined enough to understand the importance of even being here, pursuing liberty in the face of injustice at the 106th National NAACP Convention. I met a few of them in the back of the room earlier. You see, ladies, we are the backbones of our families and our communities. And when you look at the numbers, I just recently came out of a heated election. I know we women are the ones who will decide the future of public policy and politics, not only on the local and state level, but on a national scale as well. We're witnessing it right now as California Attorney General Kamala Harris and Maryland Congresswoman Donna Edwards both campaign for U.S. Senate seats. Loretta Lynch, who was just confirmed as the United States Attorney General, making her the first African-American woman to serve as the chief law enforcement officer of the United States of America. You see, despite dealing with the daily stresses of our jobs, our families, our faith, we as women, especially as African-American women, have to overcome so many more obstacles, stereotypes, and all too often self-imposed barriers in the exhibition of leadership, which is why supporting one another is so essential to each of our own individual success. More and more we hear from the academic community that women are suffering from what they call a confidence gap, a phenomenon that behavioral scientists identify as women's obsession with perfection, finding that more often women do not take the same risks as men due to a lack of confidence. It's reported that women apply for promotions, run for office, take risks when we meet all of the requisite criteria, while men, on the other hand, apply for promotions, run for office, take those same risks when they meet only half. Well, ladies, in the spirit of today's occasion, I'm here to remind you that every great movement towards progress began with warrior women who have channeled their confidence and were unafraid to challenge the status quo in the pursuit of justice and equality. Warrior women, unafraid to, in the words of Harriet Tubman, reach for the stars and change the world. Warrior women who acted within that exact moment. Warrior women who never let any time, situation, or circumstance define their destiny. Warrior women that transformed into leaders by channeling their pain into their passion and pursuing their God-given purpose, not tomorrow, but today, now, in this very moment. Taking complete advantage of the awesome power of now, an ideology shaped by and taught by every prolific leader throughout our history. At 35 years of age, I'm the youngest chief prosecutor of any major American city in the country. Thank you. Now, when I decided to run for Baltimore City State's Attorney, I embarked on a journey that was not easily rooted in an abundance of external support. I sat down with any and every politician, business owner, community and clergy leader to ask for their guidance and support in my endeavor. To my dismay, an overwhelming majority of those discussions ended with optimism for my vision, but skepticism in my ability to carry out my vision. Most of those skeptics went as far as to even discourage me from running for this office in the first place. And whether their skepticism was rooted in love or hatred, I was told over and over again that now was not my time. I was told that I was too young, that my dream was impossible. I was too young, I was too inexperienced, that I couldn't raise enough money, that my decision to run would not only interrupt, but potentially destroy my husband's political career. For me, as a young black woman, to run against an older white male incumbent with powerful backers who had the ability of raising close to $1 million. The skeptics wanted to know, how could I have the audacity? After thinking long and hard about the skepticism of the cynics, I thought about the audacity of those fearless women woven throughout our history, such as Rosa Parks, Coretta Scott King, Mary McLeod Bethune, Dorothy Irene Height, B. Gaddy, Victorine Adams, National Security Advisor Susan Rice, U.S. Attorney General Loretta Lynch, all of whom have been courageous and unwavering in their pursuit of justice and equality, even in the face of race and gender disparities. Having the audacity to believe in myself, I realized that I had to channel my confidence, deflect the negativity of ageism, sexism, and racism, and ultimately decide that as a wife, a mother raising 2 little girls in the heart of West Baltimore, a woman of and a former prosecutor with 6 years of prosecutorial experience and an overall 80% conviction rate, that I not only possess the vision, but I possess the foresight to change and reform the criminal justice system. With my passion in mind, I realized that my desire to change a criminal justice system, a system that has historically and disproportionately affected so many communities of color, far outweighed the force of any skepticism. You see, reflecting upon my faith and my life's experiences, I had to make a decision that my dream would not be deferred. I concluded that I needed to leverage the awesome power of now and run for Baltimore City State's Attorney. But first, I had to get past the skeptics and the naysayers that tried to impose self-doubt. You see, ladies, I know there have been plenty of times in your lives when you had to channel that confidence, when you had to get past that self-doubt that was imposed by other people. This is what I had to do, much like the spirit of Booker T. Washington when he proclaimed, "I have begun everything with the idea that I could succeed," and never had much patience with the multitudes of people who are always ready to explain why one cannot succeed. You see, unbeknownst to the skeptics, the depths of my conviction and the passion to succeed was because of them. Looking at the plight of our communities and the unparalleled destructive impact of the criminal justice system, I decided that I would not pass my grandparents' fight onto my children's children. You see, from slavery to Jim Crow to the industrial prison complex, there comes a point when we must say enough is enough, and that when God provides you with a purpose, He wants you to walk in that purpose. I asked myself, if not me, then who? If not now, then when? Throughout the journey of my campaign, as my skills and qualifications, work, and personal life experiences were questioned and critiqued, just when the criticism, the naysayers, and the haters began to permeate my conscience, I was reminded of the biblical verse, Isaiah 41, verse 10. "Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you, I will help you, I will uphold you with my righteous right hand." I walked in God's purpose for my life, and on June 24th, I won the Democratic nomination for Baltimore City State's Attorney in a surprising upset where I beat an incumbent that outraised me 4-1 by double-digit percentage points. I have to believe Romans 8:31, if God is for you, who can be against you? Which is how and why I'm where I am. This was not the first time that my faith and my purpose was tested. We've all in this room been tested. Prior to you walking in your purpose and God's purpose for your life, your faith must be tested in order to get you there. I can recall countless examples throughout my life where I had to step out on faith and not allow my circumstance or self-doubt to define my destiny. Like when I was at the tender age of 14 years old, my 17-year-old cousin who grew up with me like a brother, he was killed right outside of our home in broad daylight when he was mistaken as a neighborhood drug dealer. An image that to this day is still branded in my mind. At the tender age of 14, I was faced with the fact that my 17-year-old cousin, who was actually an honors student with aspirations of becoming an architect and wanted to go on to college, was now going to a grave. But what was even more perplexing to me was the fact that this individual responsible for his death was also 17 years old. This sort of violence was so common among our communities that we collectively as a community have become numb to hearing about yet another black boy laying cold in the streets. This traumatic and painful event defined my purpose for me. This was my first introduction to the criminal justice system, and for the first time, I was intrigued to see how many African American young men were affected and impacted by this system. At 14 years old, I wanted to know how could we have gotten to that young man before he elected to take my cousin's life. Little to say, I turned my pain into my passion to reform the criminal justice system. So imagine my dismay when I graduated magna cum laude from Tuskegee University with a 3.8 GPA and was waitlisted to every single law school that I applied to because I didn't perform as well on my LSAT. My faith and purpose was being tested. So when I had to think outside the box, I began in calling and requesting interviews so that I could assure admissions directors that my LSAT score was not indicative of my potential. I was told that it was a hopeless effort. I was told that it was a fruitless effort. I was told not to do it and to just try again next time. Clearly now is not your time. But when your faith and your purpose is real, you know when you must walk in God's purpose for your life. Little to say, I did not listen to the naysayers and got into my first choice law school. Then, after successfully graduating from a top 25 law school, once again my faith was tested when I did not initially pass the bar exam. Having gone through the agony of failure, I realized through that trying experience that failure is not fatal. And this was yet another test of my faith. I became relentless in my pursuit to walk in my purpose and with God in the midst of it all. I was determined that I would prevail and that I would one day be in a position to reform the criminal justice system, that I would one day be a top prosecutor. And I did. You see, those memories, those experiences are real and vivid and sit on the tip of my mental cognizance because it's those memories that force me to never give up, never take no as my last answer, and to never allow my purpose to be subdued or defined by another person's vision of me. You see, today I stand before you the benefactor of the courage and wisdom of our ancestors who have paved the way for me. They have paved the way for each and every one of you. Courageous people in the past and in the present who have and continue to make the ultimate sacrifices to put each and every one of us in a better position in life. I tell you my story, not to brag or to boast. I tell you my story, I share my testimony because I recognize that I got to where I am today, not from my own doing, but because of the blood, sweat, tears, and sacrifices of those audacious warrior women who have come before me and who have lived their life by example for all of us. We got to where we are today because of women like Harriet Tubman, Sojourner Truth, Shirley Chisholm, Rosa Parks, Myrlie Evers, Dr. Thelma Daley. We, as young people, got to where we are today because of the sacrifice, works, commitment, and dedication to the advancement of Black and colored communities throughout this nation, from organizations like the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. Having accomplished what others said could not be done, I fully appreciate, in the words of Booker T. Washington, success is to be measured not so much by the position that one has reached in life, as by the obstacles which he or she has overcome. You see, ladies, all too often in our communities, when we feel we've obtained a level of success, we want people to see where we are and not how we got to where we are. But we, as women, must cast our shame, our pride, our egos aside, and we must continue to pass our testimonies, our tried and tested journeys on to the generations coming behind us. We must utilize the untold stories of our lives to change the yet-to-be-written chapters of someone else's life. Those trials, those tribulations, those pathways of life have already been traveled by so many of us in this room. Why aren't we now guiding our young girls down the positive pathways of life? You see, there are a number of successful women in this room. Ladies, we must constantly remind ourselves that our success is the byproduct of the fruits of someone else's labor. and that true individual success is judged on not what we have obtained, but rather what we have done to put others in a position to obtain greater. This is what the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People has provided to communities of color across America for over 106 years. You see, the critical importance of this organization in 1909 drives the same need for this organization in 2015. All we have to do is turn on the news, open up the newspaper. You see, ladies, we are the present-day extension of our Rosa Parks. Our vision, we must continue to carry the torch in order to impact the inequities and injustices that so ever clearly present their strongholds till this day on communities of color. You see, according to the Bureau of Justice, 1 in 3 black men will go to prison in their lifetime. According to the Prison Policy Initiative, nationwide, blacks are 6 times more likely to be incarcerated than whites. A study of the Sentencing Project finds that black women have a 1 in 19 lifetime likelihood of imprisonment, while that same measure stands at 1 in 118 for white women. In the 42 years since the Bureau of Labor Statistics started tracking unemployment data by race, black unemployment has been on average 66% higher than that of whites. According to the Institute for Women's Policy Research, in 2014, African American women had the highest unemployment rate among all women. As recently as 2009, 11 states with felony disenfranchisement policies effectively reduced their African American voting populations by more than 10%. In the home of the NAACP in Baltimore City, there have been 160 homicides, up from 48% from last year. Non-fatal shootings, up 86% from last year. Just today, 4 were killed, 8 were shot. See, warrior women in the NAACP, clearly we have work to do, and our time to do it is now. It's time to make the most of this moment, turn it into a movement. Look at our history. Every great movement begins with warrior women unafraid to challenge the status quo. Let's utilize this moment and address the systemic and structural issues that still plague our communities. We as women, as the backbone of our communities, have to stop being immune to the violence that is robbing the next generation of our young men from their futures. Our sons, our grandsons, our brothers, our nephews, it's time for us collectively to be courageous, to protest, and get off the sidelines and get into the game of life, the game of progress. The awesome power of now, interjected with those who have come before us, have instilled in us, calls on us. Whether in Baltimore or Philadelphia, we must take a national stand, organize and collectively engage in order to redirect the trajectory of the next generation. Warrior women for justice, it's up to us to force change. Not next month, not next week, not tomorrow, but today, now in this very moment. You see, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. once eloquently proclaimed our current call to action when he said, "We are now faced with the fact that tomorrow is today." We are confronted with the fierce urgency of now. In this unfolding conundrum of life and history, there is such a thing as being too late. There is no time for apathy and complacency. This is only a time for vigorous and positive action. Our time is now, the time to act, the time to get engaged in the political process, to pursue science, technology, and math careers, to vote, to run for office, to shape social policies, to become part of the solution in transforming the state of our communities. It begins with you. It begins today. We, as the byproducts of the legacy of all of those warrior women woven throughout our history as African Americans, it's because of them that we not only have the ability, but we have an obligation to stand up and be a part of writing our country's history. Ladies, our time is now. We must step up, get past our self-doubt, and not be ashamed to share our testimonies to save our young black girls. We must be the example for the young women coming behind us, letting our young sisters know that despite what they see on reality TV or in music videos, respect for their bodies and their minds is what makes them beautiful. We must instill in our young women that they can succeed at anything they put their minds to, despite what the critics will tell them, in the face of being marginalized and stigmatized as young black women. They can and they should aspire to be the next Serena Williams, Bree Newsom, Vice President of External Affairs for Wells Fargo, Vicki Jordan Adams. Ladies, as mothers, grandmothers, sisters, aunts, friends, we must ensure that our young black boys know that they are not a statistic. They are not thugs, and they are so much more intelligent, talented, and beautiful than what the media portrays of them. We must constantly reaffirm for our fathers, our future husbands, brothers, and our sons that they are kings and more powerful united than they are divided. Ladies, our sons and daughters are watching, so we must live our lives by example for them, and it begins with the men that we choose to love. Learn to love, respect, and honor yourself. Ladies, reach for the stars, pursue your passion, and always remember to exhibit your strength, because you will one day change the world, so never let anything or anyone stop you. And while adversity will come, failure is not fatal, so seize every moment to turn that fear, that anxiety, that anger, turn that pain into your passion and pursue your purpose with confidence. In the words of Theodore Roosevelt, we must instill in our young women, it is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man and woman who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who in the end knows the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place and her place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. Warrior women of justice, advocates of change, we do not know defeat, and our time to claim victory is now. The work of the NAACP carries on. The work that they carry on behalf of our people is just as important today as it was 106 years ago. The battle lines and the cast of characters may have changed, but turn on the news. Open up the newspaper. The struggle remains. The struggle continues. Ladies, we have work to do, and the time to do it is now. If not us, then who? If not now, then when? National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, you are our shared foundation. May you forever remain steadfast and strong. Thank you.